Yeah, well, it doesn't make sense. Why would you wait for somebody to go? American Westerns, I never could understand that.
The California sun hung low over the Ventura Sporting Club as Clint Eastwood pulled his pickup into the gravel lot. It was October 1973, and the late afternoon light cast everything in that dry, golden haze that made even ordinary places look cinematic. Clint was 43 years old, fresh off a punishing month of directing and starring in High Plains Drifter, and the strain of it still clung to him. His shoulder ached from carrying the weight of both jobs, and his eyes were heavy from too many late nights spent in the editing room, staring at footage and making hard decisions. But this wasn't work. This was escape. The private shooting club had been his refuge for the past 5 years. One of the few places where the noise in his head could finally go quiet.
And he says, yeah, you shoot him, just shoot him, get rid of him, because you got 4 other guys. And he says, I don't shoot anyone in the back.
He reached into the truck bed and lifted out his gun case, an old leather one, scratched, faded, and softened by years of use. He had carried that same case since his Army days, and by now it felt less like equipment and more like an extension of himself. Familiar, reliable, steady. As he made his way toward the clubhouse, something immediately felt off. The parking lot was more crowded than usual. At least a dozen vehicles were scattered across the gravel, far more than the normal weekend crowd. There were expensive trucks, a polished Cadillac, and a long Lincoln Continental with Texas plates that practically announced importance before anyone even stepped out of it. Inside the clubhouse, Clint signed the range log at the counter. The attendant, a younger man named Pete, who usually worked Saturdays, looked up the moment he saw him. Pete normally had an easygoing manner, but today there was tension in his face, like he was trying to stay calm in the middle of something bigger than a normal shift. Busy today, Clint said, handing over his membership card. Pete nodded quickly. Yeah, Mr. Wayne is here. Brought some friends. They're using the competition range. Clint paused. John Wayne's here? Yes, sir, Pete said. Showed up about an hour ago. They're doing some kind of exhibition shoot. Drew quite a crowd. For a moment, Clint said nothing. He only felt that slight tightening in his stomach. Subtle, but real.
And he says, then just shoot him. And he said, there was a long pause, and he said, John Wayne said, you mean I shoot him in the back?
He and Wayne had never formally met, but he knew enough. Wayne had made his opinions clear in interviews. He disliked the new wave of revisionist westerns, thought they twisted and disrespected the values the genre was supposed to represent. And High Plains Drifter, dark, unsettling, morally murky, was exactly the sort of film John Wayne would have considered everything wrong with modern westerns. Pete leaned in a little. Lane 8 is open if you want some distance from the crowd. Clint gave a small nod. Thanks. He stepped back outside and headed toward the outdoor range. Even before he reached it, he could hear the sounds coming from the competition area, the sharp crack of gunfire, bursts of laughter, the low hum of spectators talking among themselves. There was energy over there, the kind that gathered around celebrity and spectacle. Clint had no interest in any of it. Lane 8 sat at the far end of the standard range, well away from the commotion. That suited him just fine.
Working with John Wayne, the villain sneaks around the room, and John Wayne comes up behind him.
He set the leather case down on the bench and opened it with practiced ease. Inside, resting in its foam padding, was his Colt single-action Army revolver. Clean, well-maintained, familiar in the deepest way. He had owned it for 15 years and practiced with it whenever he could. Not for film roles, not for publicity, for himself. Shooting was one of the few activities that truly settled him, one of the rare things that made the rest of the world disappear for a while. He reached for the revolver. Then a voice broke through the stillness. Well, look what we got here. Clint turned his head. 3 men were walking toward him from the direction of the competition range. Even at a distance, there was no mistaking John Wayne. He stood a towering 6 feet 4 inches, broad and unmistakable, wearing a tan Western shirt and his trademark Stetson, carrying that larger-than-life swagger that had made him an icon long before he ever stepped onto this range.
He said Clint Eastwood would have shot him in the back. And he said Wayne turned blue.
Even at 66, he moved with the confidence of a man who expected a room or a field to shift around him. The two men beside him looked like they belonged there too. One was tall and lean, with a weathered face and the hard look of someone who had spent his life outdoors. He was probably in his 50s. The other was stockier, maybe around 40, with a thick mustache and the solid build of a man who didn't mind taking up space. "Afternoon," Clint said calmly, turning slightly back toward his revolver, unwilling to give the moment more drama than it already carried. Wayne stopped a few feet away. His two companions remained just behind him, silent, watchful, as the air between the two western stars grew suddenly tight. "You're Clint Eastwood." Clint looked up, meeting the man's gaze without hesitation. "Yes, sir." "Thought so," the towering figure of John Wayne said, his voice carrying that unmistakable gravel and rhythm audiences knew so well. But up close, there was something sharper beneath it, an edge that didn't belong to any script. "Recognized you from the movies, those spaghetti westerns." Clint slowly set his revolver down on the bench and turned fully to face them. "That's right."
And he said, "I don't care what that kid would have done. I don't shoot him in the back."
Wayne's eyes drifted briefly to the worn leather gun case, then back to Clint's face, measuring him. "So, you actually shoot?" he asked. "Or is that just for show?" The tall man beside him let out a dry chuckle. "Come on, Duke. You know these actor types. They've got armorers handling the real guns. Probably never fired a live round outside of some safe little movie set demonstration." Clint felt the heat rise along the back of his neck, but his voice stayed even. "I shoot regularly. Have for years." "Sure you do," the stocky man added with a smirk. "I'm sure you're real good at hitting your mark when the director yells action." Wayne folded his arms across his chest, his presence filling the space without effort. "What Jerry's trying to say," he continued, "is that there's a difference between movie shooting and real shooting." He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "We've been watching you. These westerns you're making, playing those dark, brooding gunfighters. High Plains Drifter, that one where you're practically the devil." He shook his head slowly. "That's not the West I know. That's not what cowboys were about."
You know, here I am running again. I seem to be always in a damn hurry when I...
How you feeling?
I'm going to Carson City.
Clint didn't flinch. "It's just a different take on the genre." "A wrong take," Wayne shot back, his tone hardening. "You're teaching a whole generation that heroes don't exist, that the West was built by killers and cowards. That's not history. That's Hollywood cynicism." By now, the tension had started to draw attention. Shooters from the competition range drifted closer, one by one at first, then in clusters. Conversations quieted, eyes turned. Within moments, a loose crowd had formed, 20 people or more, curious, expectant. "I'm not trying to teach anyone anything," Clint said calmly. "I'm just making movies." "Movies that make mine look old-fashioned," Wayne continued, stepping slightly closer. "Movies that tell people everything I stood for was a lie." His jaw tightened. "You know what they're calling me now? A relic. Yesterday's cowboy. All because you and your Italian directors decided heroes weren't good enough anymore." The tall man stepped forward, backing him up. "You're riding on the backs of real Western stars, men who built this genre on stories that meant something, good versus evil, right versus wrong, and now you're tearing it down." "I never said..." "You didn't have to," Jerry cut in. "Your movies say it for you. All that squinting and silence trying to look deep, but it's just an act, isn't it? You're not a real cowboy. You're an actor playing dress-up." Wayne raised a hand, silencing his companions without even looking at them. His attention stayed locked on Clint. "Tell you what, Eastwood," he said, voice steady but unmistakably challenging. "You want to prove you're more than a costume?" He gestured toward the range. "Let's settle it the old-fashioned way, a shooting competition. You and me, right here."
Yeah, I'll have a touch. Ooh, this is the kind of coffee I like.
The crowd had grown thicker now, 30 people at least, drawn in by the confrontation. Some watched with quiet sympathy, others with open curiosity, and a few with the kind of excitement that only came from witnessing something rare and unscripted. "I didn't come here for a competition," Clint replied, his tone low and controlled. "I came here to practice." Wayne gave a faint, knowing smile. "Oh, I bet you did, because practicing alone is easy. No pressure, no one watching." He leaned in just slightly. "But real shooting, real competition, that takes something you've never had to show on screen." A pause. Actual courage. One of Wayne's companions shifted uneasily. "Duke, maybe we should—" "Jerry," the tall man began, sensing the tension tipping too far. "No." John Wayne cut him off sharply. His eyes never left Clint. "I'm tired of watching this kid tear down everything we built. If he wants to make westerns, if he wants to play the gunslinger, then he'd better be able to shoot like one." Before Clint could respond, a woman's voice sliced cleanly through the charged air. "John, that's enough. He's not bothering anyone." Heads turned. Near the back of the growing crowd stood a silver-haired woman in her 60s, wearing a worn shooting vest and holding a competition rifle with the ease of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried quiet authority. "Stay out of this, Marine," Wayne said, though the edge in his voice softened just a touch. "I will not stay out of it when I see you bullying someone for making movies you don't like," she replied firmly. "This is a shooting club, not a film criticism seminar." Wayne's jaw flexed, but he didn't rise to it. Instead, he kept his attention locked on Clint. "The offer stands, Eastwood," he said. "You and me, standard precision shooting, 25 yards, 6 shots. Let's see if you're as good as you pretend to be on screen." Clint glanced down at his revolver, then slowly lifted his gaze to the crowd. Faces everywhere now, watching, waiting, whispering, then back to Wayne. This wasn't just anyone challenging him. This was the Duke, a legend not only in film, but in shooting circles too. Wayne had competed in fast-draw contests, spent years refining his technique. This wasn't just about pride, it was about stepping into an arena where the other man already had the advantage. "What exactly are we shooting for?" Clint asked quietly. Wayne's smile was thin, almost cold. "Simple. 6 rounds each. Best grouping wins. If I win—" He paused just long enough for the crowd to lean in. "You admit those westerns of yours are cheap imitations, that you're riding on the coattails of the real thing." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. "And if I win?" Clint asked. Wayne gave a short nod. "Then I admit you can shoot." Silence settled heavily over the range. Clint took a moment. He thought about the hours he'd spent here, alone, practicing, not for cameras, not for applause, but because it grounded him. He thought about learning to shoot as a boy, about discipline, control, and patience. This wasn't acting. This was something real. He also knew the risk. Wayne wasn't bluffing. At 25 yards, the odds leaned heavily in the Duke's favor. "All right," Clint said at last, "but let's make it interesting." Wayne raised an eyebrow slightly. "I'm listening." "Not 25 yards, Clint said evenly. 50. For a split second, the world seemed to pause. Then the crowd reacted. Gasps, low whistles, disbelief rippling outward. 50 yards? The tall man sputtered. That's ridiculous. Even Duke doesn't... I'll do it, Wayne interrupted immediately, his competitive instinct igniting. 50 yards it is. The energy in the air shifted instantly. "This I've got to see," someone muttered. The range master, an older man named Frank with a lined face and a clipboard tucked under his arm, stepped forward. "Gentlemen, what exactly is going on here?" "Just a friendly competition," Wayne said smoothly, as if this had all been planned. "Eastwood and I are going to settle who's the better shot. 50 yards, 6 rounds each." Frank looked to Clint. "That accurate?" Clint nodded. "Yes, sir." Frank studied both men for a moment, weighing more than just the words. Then he gave a slow nod. "All right, but we do this proper. I'll set fresh targets at 50 yards, standard bullseye. You shoot, you step back, and everyone gets a clear look. Clean competition, no nonsense." As Frank headed downrange to set up, the crowd buzzed to life. Quiet conversations turned into speculation. Clint could hear bets being whispered, odds thrown around. Most of them favored Wayne. Of course they did. Behind him, one of Wayne's companions leaned in. "Duke, you sure about this? 50 yards is..." "I'm sure," Wayne said without hesitation. "It's time someone put this kid in his place." The tall man turned toward Clint. "Last chance to back out, Eastwood. No shame in knowing your limits." Clint met his gaze, calm and steady. "I'm good." The man gave a small shrug. "Your funeral." A few moments later, Frank returned and raised a hand. "Targets are set." He looked between them. "Mr. Wayne, you won the coin toss. You want to shoot first or second?" Wayne didn't hesitate. "I'll go first." He stepped forward toward the firing line with the confidence of a man who had lived in moments like this. From his holster, he drew a beautifully maintained Colt .45 revolver. Custom grips, fine engraving catching the light. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a statement. The crowd fell completely silent. Wayne took his stance, wide, balanced, deliberate. His movements were controlled, efficient. No wasted motion. For a man of 66, his steadiness was remarkable. He raised the revolver. Bang. The first shot cracked sharply through the still air. He didn't look at the target. Didn't need to. He adjusted, trusting instinct and repetition. Bang. A rhythm began to form. Bang, 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 bang. 6 shots, clean and controlled, all within 20 seconds. Wayne lowered the revolver and stepped back, his expression unreadable. Frank walked down range, each step stretching the tension tighter. The crowd barely breathed. When he reached the target, he leaned in, studying it carefully. A long pause. Then he turned back. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank called out, his voice carrying across the range, "we have 6 shots, 5 in the bullseye, 1 just outside." A beat. 8-inch grouping. Total score, 54 out of 60. The silence shattered. Applause broke out instantly, loud and impressed. Some cheered, others nodded in appreciation. It was exactly what they had expected, and maybe even a little better, because that was John Wayne. And now, it was Clint Eastwood's turn. "That was exceptional shooting," someone murmured from the crowd. And it was, especially at 50 yards with a revolver. John Wayne accepted the praise with a small, controlled nod, but his attention never left Clint. His eyes stayed locked, steady, expectant. "Your turn, kid." Clint stepped forward toward the firing line. His heartbeat was heavy in his chest, thumping hard enough that he could feel it in his fingertips, but his face gave nothing away. He paused just long enough to check his revolver again. 6 rounds, clean, ready. The weight sat perfectly in his hand, familiar in a way no camera prop could ever replicate. Around him, the silence thickened. 30 people or more stood watching now, waiting, judging. Most of them, he knew, were expecting the same thing, expecting him to fall short. "This is where he chokes," someone whispered from somewhere behind him. Clint didn't react. He shut it out completely. Instead, he focused inward, just like he'd been taught years ago, breathing first, always breathing. In through the nose, slow. Out through the mouth, steady. Again, let the world fade. Let the noise dissolve. He raised the revolver. His stance wasn't flashy. No exaggerated posture, no competition-perfect alignment. Just something simple, grounded, the way he'd learned. Refined over countless quiet hours on ranges just like this one. He brought the sights into line. At 50 yards, the target looked small, almost unreal. A distant point in a wide, empty space. He let his breath out halfway, held it. And in that moment, everything else disappeared. The crowd, the tension, Wayne, the possibility of embarrassment or failure. All of it slipped away like it had never been there. There was only Clint, only the revolver, only the target. He squeezed the trigger. Bang! The recoil snapped cleanly through his hand. Familiar, controlled, no hesitation. He didn't look to see where it landed. He didn't need to. His body already knew what to do. Breathe, adjust, squeeze, bang. Again, bang. A rhythm took over, quiet, steady, almost hypnotic. Each shot felt right, clean, true. Bang, bang, bang. 6 shots. Then the soft final click of an empty chamber. Clint lowered the revolver slowly. His arm remained steady, his breathing controlled. The range had gone completely silent. Frank turned and began the walk down range. It felt longer this time, much longer. Clint stood still, eyes forward, unable to clearly make out the target from where he was. He replayed the shots in his mind, one by one, searching for any mistake, any slip. He thought he'd done well, but well wasn't enough here, not against Wayne. Frank reached the target and leaned in, studying it carefully. His shoulders shifted slightly as he examined the grouping. For a long moment, his face gave nothing away. Then he straightened and turned. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank called out, his voice carrying clearly across the range, "we have 6 shots." A pause. All 6 in the bullseye. The silence cracked. 4-inch grouping. Another beat. Total score, 60 out of 60. For a fraction of a second, no one moved. Then the range exploded. Cheers broke out. A few stunned laughs. Others groaned as bets were lost and money quietly changed hands. The energy shifted instantly, from expectation to disbelief. The silver-haired woman who had spoken up earlier clapped with genuine enthusiasm, a proud smile on her face. But Clint wasn't looking at the crowd. His eyes were on Wayne. For the first time since the confrontation began, the Duke looked shaken. The confidence that had filled him minutes earlier had drained into something else entirely. Surprise, disbelief. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes fixed on the target Frank now carried back. As both targets were brought forward, people surged in closer, eager to see for themselves. Wayne's target was impressive. 5 shots tight in the bullseye, 1 just outside, spread across 8 inches. Clint's, all 6 rounds clustered tightly in the center, so close they nearly overlapped. That's impossible," Jerry stammered. "Nobody shoots perfect at 50 yards with a revolver." "Apparently somebody does," the silver-haired woman said calmly. Frank handed Clint his target, still shaking his head slightly in disbelief. "Son," he said, "that's some of the finest shooting I've seen in 40 years running this range. Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Clint accepted the paper with a quiet nod. "Army, mostly. Then practice, a lot of practice." Behind him, Wayne finally spoke. "You got lucky," he said, though the certainty was gone from his voice. "That's all. Beginner's luck." Clint turned slowly to face him. "You think so?" "Has to be," Wayne replied, though he faltered slightly. "Nobody—" He stopped himself mid-sentence. Clint held his gaze. "Nobody what?" A beat. "Nobody who makes the kind of westerns you don't like could possibly be a real shooter?" Clint continued, his voice still calm, but now carrying weight. "Nobody who plays anti-heroes could have real skill?" Wayne's face flushed, a flicker of frustration breaking through. Clint stepped a little closer, not aggressive, but firm. "Here's the thing, Mr. Wayne," he said evenly. "I never claimed my movies were better than yours. I never said the old westerns were wrong." He paused, letting that settle. "I just wanted to tell different stories." A quiet moment hung between them. "That's all. But you decided that because I make films you don't like, I must be a fraud," Clint continued, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable weight. "You judged me before I ever picked up this gun." The crowd had gone quiet again, completely still, drawn into the shift they were witnessing. What had started as a challenge had turned into something else entirely. "You called me out in front of all these people," Clint said, gesturing lightly toward the onlookers. "You wanted to prove I was just a costume and a squint. But I'm not." He held Wayne's gaze. "I'm someone who's been shooting since I was a kid, someone who respects the craft, both the craft of shooting and the craft of making westerns." He paused, letting his words settle. "I don't have to make movies like yours for them to be valid, and you don't have to like my movies for me to be a real shooter." John Wayne stood there, jaw tight, but for once he had nothing to say. The silence stretched. Then Clint exhaled slightly, his tone softening back to its usual calm. "Now, I believe we had an agreement. You said if I won, you'd admit I can shoot." A small pause. "I'm waiting." Wayne glanced around at the crowd. The energy had shifted, no longer expectant, but watchful. Some faces held amusement, others disappointment. A few, quiet respect. For a brief moment, Wayne seemed older. Not physically, but in the way his shoulders settled, the way the fight left his expression. "You can shoot," he said quietly. Clint tilted his head slightly. "Didn't catch that." Wayne swallowed, then spoke louder, his voice rougher now. "I said, you can shoot. That was exceptional shooting, better than mine." Clint gave a single respectful nod. "Thank you." He turned, reaching for his gear, ready to leave the moment behind and return to the quiet he had come for in the first place. But before he could take a step, another voice cut in. "Duke, you old fool." Heads turned again. An older man approached from the direction of the clubhouse, distinguished, composed with neatly combed white hair and a posture that spoke of decades of discipline. His jacket marked him as someone important within the range. "Colonel Patterson," Frank said, clearly surprised. "Didn't know you were here today." "I was in my office doing paperwork," the colonel replied, his sharp eyes moving between Wayne and Clint. "Heard the commotion." He nodded toward the targets still in Frank's hands. "May I?" Frank handed them over without hesitation. Colonel Patterson studied both targets carefully, taking his time. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly as he moved from Wayne's to Clint's. Then his eyes lifted and settled on Clint. Recognition flickered. "You're Clint Eastwood, the actor." "Yes, sir." Patterson tilted his head slightly. "And before that, you were stationed at Fort Ord, Army, early 50s, swimming instructor." Clint blinked, surprised. "That's right. How did you know?" A faint smile touched the colonel's face. "Because I was there. I was a captain back then, overseeing part of the marksmanship program." He paused, studying Clint more closely. "You placed third in the All-Army Pistol Championship in 1952, didn't you?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Clint nodded once. "Yes, sir." "Third place," Patterson repeated, turning slightly so others could hear. "Out of nearly 2,000 competitors. And you would have placed higher if you hadn't been using standard issue equipment while others had custom rigs." The murmuring grew louder. But this time it wasn't skepticism, it was respect. Jerry's earlier confidence had completely evaporated. Wait, you're telling me this guy is actually, what, a championship-level shooter? Was, Clint corrected quietly. That was over 20 years ago. Patterson let out a low chuckle. Was, son, if that's you, Rusty, I'd hate to see you in your prime. He turned toward Wayne, his expression sharpening. Duke, did you know any of this before you challenged him? Wayne didn't answer right away. Then quietly, no, sir. Patterson gave a slow, knowing nod. Let me guess. You saw his movies, didn't like the direction they took the Western genre, and assumed he was just another Hollywood actor playing dress-up. Wayne said nothing. He didn't have to. Well, Patterson said firmly, his voice carrying authority, let this be a lesson. Never assume a man's capability based on his profession or the kind of art he chooses to make. Mr. Eastwood here is the real deal, always has been. The words settled heavily over the group. The tall man, so confident earlier, stepped forward, his tone completely changed. Mr. Eastwood, we owe you more than just acknowledgement. What Duke said, what we all said, that was out of line. Clint studied them for a moment, Wayne in particular. The pride was still there, but it had shifted. Less arrogance now, more honesty, maybe even a touch of humility. Clint nodded slowly. Tell you what, he said. The group leaned in slightly. Instead of apologies, how about we all shoot together? A few surprised looks were exchanged. I could use some pointers on fast draw technique, Clint added, glancing toward Wayne. I'm sure Mr. Wayne knows methods I've never learned. Wayne blinked, caught off guard. You want to shoot with me after what I said? Clint gave a small shrug, almost a half smile. Why not? We're all here for the same reason, aren't we? He extended his hand. Clean slate. For a moment, Wayne just stared at it. Then slowly, he reached out and took it, gripping firmly. Clean slate, he said. A pause. And I was wrong about you, Eastwood, he exhaled. That was some of the best shooting I've ever seen, maybe the best. Clint nodded. Thank you, sir. Then, after a brief moment, he added something quieter, more personal. For what it's worth, I grew up watching your movies. That landed. True Grit is one of my favorites, Clint said, his tone sincere. You're the reason I wanted to make Westerns in the first place. For a brief moment, John Wayne looked genuinely caught off guard. His eyes widened just slightly, as if the words had landed somewhere deeper than he expected. You mean that? He asked. I do, Clint replied without hesitation. I'm not trying to replace what you built. I'm trying to add to it, show different sides of the same story. Something shifted then. The tension that had defined Wayne's posture began to ease. The defensiveness faded, replaced by something quieter, something closer to understanding. Maybe I've been looking at it wrong, Wayne admitted after a moment. Maybe there's room for both kinds of Westerns. The crowd slowly began to disperse, the spectacle giving way to normalcy again. A few people approached Clint, some shaking his hand, others asking about his technique, still others simply wanting to say they'd witnessed something unforgettable. Frank even offered him an honorary lifetime membership on the spot, while the silver-haired woman, Morin, invited him to join the club's competition team. But what stayed with Clint most weren't the compliments. It was something Colonel Patterson had said quietly off to the side as Clint packed up his gear. You know, son, what you did out there wasn't just about proving you could shoot, the colonel said. It was about maintaining your dignity in the face of unfair criticism. Clint had listened, saying nothing. You didn't get angry, you didn't lash out, Patterson continued. You let your actions speak for you, and then You offered friendship instead of rubbing his face in it. He gave a small nod. That's the mark of a true professional. Later that evening, as Clint drove home, the California sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in deep orange and fading gold. The quiet inside the truck gave him space to think. He thought about Patterson's words. He thought about Wayne. About how easy it would have been to push harder, to humiliate him, to make the moment sting. But what would that have solved? The target from his perfect score sat on the passenger seat, the clustered holes in the center a quiet reminder of what had happened. Not just the shooting, but the choice afterward. Sometimes the best response to judgment wasn't anger, it was excellence, and then grace. By the time he got home, the phone was already ringing. He stepped inside and picked it up. "Clint, I heard the most incredible story," came the unmistakable voice of Sergio Leone, full of energy even through the line. "Something about you and John Wayne at a shooting range?" Clint smiled faintly. "News travels fast." "Is it true?" Leone pressed. "Did you really shoot a perfect score to beat John Wayne?" "Something like that." Leone burst into laughter, loud and booming. "This is perfect, absolutely perfect." "What is?" "It means the two biggest names in Westerns are no longer enemies," Leone said. "Maybe now people will stop seeing your films and his films as opposites. Maybe they'll finally understand. They are two sides of the same tradition." After they hung up, Clint stepped out onto his porch with a beer and sat down, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. The quiet didn't last long. The phone rang again. This time it was a reporter from Variety. "Mr. Eastwood, is it true you outshot John Wayne at the Ventura Sporting Club?" Clint leaned back slightly. "We had a friendly competition," he said evenly. "I got lucky." "Lucky?" the reporter repeated. "Our source says you shot a perfect score at 50 yards. The circumstances were favorable." There was a pause. "Still, it must feel good to prove your critics wrong." Clint thought about that for a moment. "Honestly," he said, "the best part wasn't the shooting, it was the conversation afterward. Mr. Wayne and I had a chance to talk about Westerns, about different approaches to the genre. I think we both learned something." "That's very diplomatic of you." After that call, Clint unplugged the phone. He had a feeling it wouldn't stop ringing anytime soon. He was right. By Monday morning, the story had spread through Hollywood. His agent called, thrilled about the attention. Studios reached out, eager to turn the moment into something marketable. Magazine editors pushed for interviews, headlines already forming in their minds. But the call that mattered most came Tuesday morning. Clint picked up the phone. "Eastwood," came the voice on the other end. "This is John Wayne." "Mr. Wayne," Clint said. "Good to hear from you." There was a brief pause. "Listen," Wayne said, his tone more measured now, stripped of the earlier bravado. "I wanted to call you personally, properly, without a crowd around." Clint said nothing, letting him continue. "What I said on Saturday, about your movies, about you being a fraud," Wayne exhaled. "That was out of line." "I appreciate that." "I've been thinking about what you said," Wayne continued. "About adding to the tradition instead of replacing it. About different sides of the same story." Another pause. "I still don't love these darker Westerns of yours," he admitted. "Probably never will. But I was wrong to say they're not valid. And I was wrong to say you're not the real deal." Clint nodded, even though Wayne couldn't see it. "We can disagree," Wayne added, "and still respect each other." "That's what I'm learning too," Clint said. There was a shift in Wayne's tone, more thoughtful now. "Look, I've got a proposition for you." Clint leaned forward slightly. "I'm listening." "I'm doing a film next year," Wayne said. "The Shootist. It's about an aging gunfighter dying of cancer. Probably the last one I'll ever make." His voice softened just a touch. There's a scene in the script where a young gunslinger challenges the old man. The writer wants to cast some unknown. He paused. "But I was thinking, what if it was you?" Clint sat there for a moment, genuinely surprised, not just by the offer, but by what it represented. What had started as confrontation had turned into respect. "You want me in your movie?" Clint asked, still slightly surprised. "I want the best shooter in Hollywood in my movie," John Wayne replied without hesitation. "That happens to be you. And more than that, I think it would mean something." Clint leaned back slightly, listening. "The Old West meeting, the New West," Wayne continued. "But this time with respect, instead of hostility." A small pause. "I'd be honored, Mr. Wayne." Wayne let out a faint chuckle. "Duke? Call me Duke." They stayed on the phone for another 20 minutes, talking, not arguing, not debating, but talking about the script, about Westerns, about how the industry was changing faster than either of them had expected. By the time they hung up, something had shifted in a way Clint couldn't quite put into words yet. The role in The Shootist never actually came to life for Clint. Scheduling conflicts got in the way, and Wayne's declining health made things more complicated than either of them wanted to admit. But the opportunity had already done its job, because what truly came out of that day wasn't a film, it was a friendship. Over the months that followed, Clint found himself returning to the Ventura Sporting Club more often than ever. And when Duke felt well enough, he showed up too. They didn't compete anymore, they just shot. Two men standing side by side, sharing something they both respected deeply. Duke taught Clint the fast draw techniques he had refined back in the 1950s. Small details, subtle movements, the kind of knowledge that only came from years of repetition. In return, Clint showed him precision methods he had learned during his Army days. Discipline, breathing control, the quiet science behind consistency. They weren't rivals anymore. They were colleagues, friends, and the people around them noticed. The story of their first confrontation and what it turned into spread quietly through shooting circles. At the Ventura Club, it began to change the atmosphere. Less ego, more respect, less posturing, more learning. Jerry, Morin, and even the tall man, whose name turned out to be Tom, became regulars in their informal group. The tension that once defined their first meeting faded completely, replaced by something genuine. One afternoon, months later, Duke leaned back after a round of shooting and let out a quiet sigh. "You know what the worst part was?" he admitted. Clint glanced over. "What's that?" "Deep down," Wayne paused, "I think I was jealous." Clint didn't interrupt. "There you were," Duke continued. "Younger, making successful films, getting all that critical attention, and I couldn't handle the idea that you might also be a better shooter than me." Clint shook his head slightly. "You're one of the best shooters I've ever seen, Duke. That 54 out of 60 at 50 yards, that's championship-level shooting." "Maybe," Duke said, "but you got 60 out of 60. He looked down at his revolver for a moment. "Perfect. I've been chasing that kind of score for 20 years, and you walked up and did it on your first try. I got lucky." Duke shook his head firmly. "No, you earned it, and I should have recognized that from the start, instead of letting my ego get in the way." That moment stayed with both of them, and strangely, the incident began to ripple beyond the shooting range. In Hollywood, directors and producers started to see something new. If Clint Eastwood and John Wayne, two completely different faces of the Western genre, could respect each other, maybe the genre itself didn't have to be divided. Maybe there was room for both. Critics began to pick up on it too. Articles appeared analyzing the shift, suggesting that the traditional Wayne-style Western and the darker revisionist Eastwood style weren't opposites at all, but complementary visions of the same evolving mythology. Years passed. Clint's career grew, not just as an actor, but as a director with his own voice, his own identity. And every now and then, the story would resurface. One afternoon, during an interview, a journalist leaned forward with a curious smile. "There's a story about you and John Wayne at a shooting range," they said. "Is it true?" Clint smiled slightly. "Which version have you heard?" "The one where he challenged you, and you beat him with a perfect score." Clint gave a small nod. "Something like that happened?" The journalist leaned in further. "So what's the real story?" Clint thought about it for a moment. "The real story," he said slowly, "is that Duke and I started off on the wrong foot. We had different ideas about what Westerns should be." He paused, then added, "But we found common ground through respect for the craft, both filmmaking and shooting." The journalists tilted their head. "That's it? Feels like there's more to it." Clint smiled again, this time a little deeper. "There always is," he said quietly. "Maybe," Clint said thoughtfully, "but the details aren't really the important part." The journalist looked up from their notes. "It's the lesson that matters," Clint continued. "You can disagree with someone about art, about vision, about how something should be done, and still respect them as a person, as a craftsman." He paused briefly. "Duke taught me that, and I hope I taught him something too." The journalist scribbled quickly. "He spoke highly of you before he passed," they added. "Said you were the best natural shooter he'd ever seen." For a moment, Clint didn't respond. A quiet tightness settled in his chest. John Wayne had been gone 4 years now. Cancer, just like the character he played in The Shootist. Life, in its own way, had mirrored the story. "He was generous with his praise," Clint said quietly. The journalist nodded. "He also said you taught him that Westerns could evolve without betraying their roots." Clint gave a faint smile. "We taught each other a few things." Later that afternoon, Clint found himself driving out to the Ventura Sporting Club again. Time had changed the place. There were new buildings now, updated equipment, cleaner lines, and modern touches. But the soul of it remained. Lane 8 still stood at the far end, just as it always had. Quiet, slightly removed, his spot. Some things didn't need to change. Colonel Patterson was gone now, but the main competition hall bore his name, a quiet tribute to the man who had once stepped in and changed the course of a single afternoon. Frank had retired too, though he still stopped by on weekends watching younger shooters with the same careful eye he'd always had. Clint set his gear down at Lane 8 and opened the familiar case. As he prepared, his mind drifted back to that day in 1973. What had started as confrontation had turned into something far more meaningful. A challenge born from disagreement, a moment of proof, and then, unexpectedly, a bridge. The framed target from that day still hung in Clint's home office. 6 shots, tight in the center, a perfect score. But it wasn't a trophy, it was a reminder. That excellence speaks louder than argument. That grace carries more weight than revenge. And that the surest way to change someone's mind isn't through words. It's through quiet demonstration. The sound of an engine pulled him from his thoughts. An old Cadillac rolled into the lot. Clint smiled. A moment later, Jerry stepped out. Older now, well into his 70s, but still moving with the same steady confidence. A little slower, maybe, but still sharp. "Thought I'd find you here," Jerry called as he approached, carrying his gear. Clint chuckled lightly. "Where else would I be on a Saturday?" They set up side by side without another word, falling into an easy rhythm built over years. Load, aim, fire, reset, the quiet meditation of the range. After a few rounds, Jerry shifted slightly, adjusting his stance. "You know," he said, "I never really thanked you properly for that day." Clint glanced over. "What day?" Jerry gave him a look. "Come on, Clint, you know what day." A small smile crossed Clint's face. "That was a long time ago." "Maybe," Jerry said, "but it mattered." Clint didn't interrupt. "You could have humiliated him," Jerry continued. "Could have made Duke look like a bitter old man in front of everyone. Nobody would have blamed you." He paused. "Instead, you gave him a way out, a way to keep his dignity and still learn something." Clint leaned back slightly, listening. "That took real class," Jerry added. Clint shrugged lightly. He apologized. "That took class, too." They returned to shooting, the conversation settling into silence again, comfortable, unforced. People came and went throughout the afternoon. A few recognized Clint, approaching politely, asking for autographs or just a quick word. He obliged, always with the same calm presence. At one point, a younger man, maybe around 30, walked up, clearly a little nervous. "Excuse me, Mr. Eastwood," he said. "I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of your movies and Mr. Wayne's." Clint nodded politely. "Appreciate that." The man smiled. "My dad used to say you two represented different sides of America. Both true, both important." Clint considered that for a moment. Then he gave a small, genuine smile. "Your dad sounds like a wise man." The young man nodded, clearly pleased, before stepping away. Clint turned back to the range, lifting his revolver once more. Different sides, same story. And somewhere along the way, respect had turned opposition into something lasting. "Clint said he was," the young man had added earlier. "He passed 2 years ago, but he always told me the story of when you and the Duke became friends. Said it taught him that people can change, that respect matters more than being right." After the young man walked away, Jerry let out a quiet chuckle. "You and John Wayne really did change things, didn't you? Made it okay for people to appreciate both sides of Westerns." Clint shook his head lightly. "We just shot together a few times." Jerry smiled. "That's not all, and you know it." As the sun began to set, painting the California sky in deep orange and soft purple, Clint packed up his gear. His thoughts drifted back to Duke, the larger-than-life legend who, beneath it all, had been human like anyone else. A man who had once pushed back against what he didn't understand, and then learned to respect it. Over the years, the story had taken on a life of its own. People added details, exaggerated moments, reshaped it into something bigger than it really was. Clint never corrected them. Because the truth didn't need embellishment. 2 men had disagreed. One had issued a challenge. The other had answered, not with anger, but with quiet confidence. And in the end, both had grown. That was enough. Driving home, Clint reflected on the path his life had taken. From a ranch kid to a soldier, to an actor, to a director. From being dismissed as a fraud to earning respect, not just in film, but in the things that mattered beyond it. That day at the range could have gone differently. He could have walked away, he could have lost, he could have won and made it personal. But he hadn't. And that choice had changed everything. Back home, the framed target still hung on his wall, a perfect score. But what mattered more was the photograph beside it, a candid moment. Clint and Duke at the range, both laughing, no tension, no rivalry, just 2 men who had moved past judgment into something real. Some stories are about winning, some are about losing, but the best ones are about what happens after. This was one of those stories. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, just like it had all those years ago, Clint Eastwood smiled quietly. Because some stories don't just end, they begin. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.